Welcome to What to Do When, a podcast from real lawyers with real perspective, where we explore a variety of legal issues and scenarios. Each week, we focus on a new topic and discuss what to do when and if any of these legal scenarios ever happen to you or a loved one. With over 40 years of combined legal experience, our hosts offer their unique perspectives and insights on a range of real-life legal situations.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Another podcast here at Critzer Cardani in Richmond, Virginia. I'm Jackie.
And I'm Scott. Jackie, what's on the docket for today?
What to do when you want your kids to have a good life.
You mean modeling?
Well, is it modeling?
It could be, but we got Bill Faeth with us today. We've been having these last couple podcasts with Bill, and we did his credentials on the first one, but I wanted to ask Bill one question that he and I were talking off camera about is, Bill, you talked about your training in Cincinnati. Just give us a little brief history about that and how you were trained differently than some people are trained.
Well, for most clinical social workers, you train for 2 years after graduate school, about 3,000 hours, and that's that. You get your license. Way back when, I learned from people, serious therapists, psychiatrists, and more. That's just the beginning. So I decided to continue training in alcohol abuse, continue training in eating disorders, continue training in intensive therapy. And among the things I did train at Cincinnati Analytic Institute to want to intensively learn that. But in the process, one of the big things they teach you there is what's the use of self, meaning how to begin to understand your own bugs and how they may play out, and how not to work your stuff out in other people, and ultimately how to be neutral in the whole process, which I thought was a very powerful form of training.
Yeah, and that didn't last 15 minutes?
No, it was 2 years of me taking therapy from the guy who became my supervisor, very renowned psychoanalyst, and then the next 2 years we're talking about cases, but he'd periodically call me out, well, you think this is part of your issue here, so forcing me to look at myself within the process of doing the work.
Oh, I think, and you know, it's funny, I think we as counselors at law walk through some of that as well, right? I mean, we all, whenever we're dealing with anything, I think we all have a tendency to see it through the lens of our own bias and our own experiences. What we do, though, is a bit different than what you do, and how your issues could provide a lens to people that you're talking to. I understand that would certainly be different. But we're talking today about giving your kids the best chance for a good life. Why is that coming up? Scott, you said something about modeling.
Yeah, this has been, from my experience doing this work for the length I did. I was a teacher before this, and I was in youth ministry as a young guy. So, I mean, the kids and family have been my whole life, even though I wouldn't have recognized that at the beginning. But one of the things I see is this thing of modeling and how our behaviors, and I want Bill to talk about this, not me because I'm not the counselor, but how our adult behaviors affect kids and how that plays out. Because I have found as a practitioner, as I bring up these issues of mom's bad behaviors or dad's bad behaviors and how they're affecting the kids, people immediately go, well, we can't judge their morality, Mr. Cardani. It doesn't matter that they've had 36 sexual partners in 2 days. You know, that doesn't matter. And I'm always like, it does matter. And it breaks my heart because I'm sitting there, this kid is dealing with this garbage, and that is going to be their reality because, well, Bill, you go ahead. I stop.
It starts when the kids are just born. That all the world they know, the model they see are mom and dad, and how mom and dad behave is what they learn is what's real. They first learn it through the language we speak. The same kid growing up in Poland is going to learn a different language than I learned. You follow me? And they're going to see rituals and ways of behaving that mom and dad, how you talk, how you walk, how you dress, all those kinds of things. But, you know, it's Ralphie in the Christmas Story. Ralphie commented on it, but he's out, they're on the way to see Santa Claus, and the tire blows because Dad gets cheap tires, and they're in the back, and Mom says, well, why don't you take Ralphie with you? And Ralphie's holding the hubcap, and Dad bumps the hubcap, and the lug bolts go in the air, and Ralphie says the F word. Dad gets back in the car, whispers to Mom, you know what Ralphie said, the F word, and she screeches. She doesn't remember that Dad uses the word 5 times a day in the basement doing the clinkers downstairs, and she doesn't confront him over that. They're both oblivious what's going on, what's Ralphie hearing, and what's Ralphie doing. And it's we live in a world that almost enables everything. It's my truth kind of thing, and we need to realize things that I do impact people, kids who watch me doing it.
Well, and we have so many catchphrases, right? Like monkey see, monkey do, right? Do as I say, not as I do. That's what everybody really wants to live by is, well, I'll tell you to do it the right way, but I'm going to do it the way I want to do it and hope that instead of following my model of behavior, you do it the way that I want you to.
But you're making a powerful point. But the world we live in, again, is because I'm the parent, I get to do whatever I want, and it's not going to impact anybody. It's what I choose, what I want, what I desire, blah, 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 blah. And the thought there's a world outside of me, i.e. I have kids, and what I'm showing them is how to live, and it might not be very good. No, who's calling them out for that?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, as a guardian lineup for years, and one of the things I wanted to bring up in this, and I'm going to bring it right now, I probably shouldn't. We should probably start off. Let's start off because we did talk about that. You know, there's these things of, just say, trying to think of an example, but you brought up language.
Language, sure.
Or behavior, like simple behaviors, like say, Dad uses marijuana, you know, and he's a frequent marijuana user. Is that a problem for the kids?
Well, let me play devil's advocate. Is it? If the kid doesn't know, is it different if the kid sees Dad blowing a puff of smoke and says, hey, Mom, does Dad smoke? Right now we're in kind of a different situation. But really, where you were saying the softer start, I'm not sure that jumping into marijuana and alcohol was the softer start. The softer start is the language, right? Having an 8-month-old at home right now, which most of our viewers and listeners know, when I go into her in the morning, she's waking up, I sing to her. She is the happiest little girl you would ever meet. She is so joyful. But we sing to her, and good morning, I love you. Did you sleep so great? And she sees her sister across the hall, and she has just great big smiles for her because she's seen my own behavior towards my other children and my husband, and this is how we greet people. We start the day this way, and she, you know, sees the way. Well, how do you teach a child, right? If she's putting something in a bucket, she sees you put it in the bucket. She sees me put it in the bucket and take it out of the bucket, and then she goes, well, I want to do that too. How do babies teach themselves how to eat?
But I want to add to what you're saying, which I learned at the Analytic Institute. I call him David, very renowned psychiatrist. He told me, go to a public place, don't act it out, sit there and pretend you have the expression on your face that you see. And what he taught me instantly, what you show in your face, impact, an emotion will show up. Follow me? What you see, an emotion shows up inside. Mm-hmm. And when kids see anger, a singing emotion, happy, right? We are hardwired face to emotion. Hardwired.
Wow.
And that when you're yelling at each other, screaming at each other, what is the kid? The kid's going to see that. They have to look at it, and you think that's not hardwired just because they're two. There's not some emotion going on when they see you having the emotion or yelling or screaming? Of course they do.
Wow. I almost have to pause right there, folks. I mean, you really need to take that in for a second. I mean, that's huge. And that should make us accountable at some level. Because right now, I'm thinking of my own self, and I'm like, I could do better in some areas, you know, because you're right. They feel that emotion. We try to say they don't, but.
Yeah, they see your face, and well, what does that face mean? And bingo, something's going on. It's just, sorry. But
is that backed by research? That's just your
truth, little,
right?
David, I don't have the research in front of me, but David demonstrated how the research plays out. Do you follow me?
Yeah.
Sure.
That is research. That's known. I can't cite it.
That's okay.
But he made me live it. Do you follow me?
Yes.
Just go sit and watch people and have expressions. Oh, bingo, look at that. People think I read minds. I don't read minds. I've been forced to, what does that emotion look, what does that face do? And you were probably feeling so. Are you feeling so? How'd you know that? Because
in a while.
Because we wear our emotions on our face.
Well, I was trained to
Look for
notice.
it. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that's great.
And then how that impacts not just your spouse, but your children. And how that behavior, you come home from work, it's been a rough day at work, you walk in, you're not happy to see the family, not because you don't want to see them, but because you haven't turned work off and you're broadcasting. That's what I say at home. I said, you're broadcasting this. Why do you have such a grumpy look? I'm not grumpy. Tell your face. Your face says you're grumpy. And you're impacted. I see it if I'm impacted by it. And I wouldn't have ever said it so eloquently as you did when you said it's the expression on the face direct. It's hardwired to the emotion, which is stored in the proverbial heart, right? Not the physical beating heart. It's so poignant. I feel like it's just sort of sitting really heavy in this discussion, but it's so poignant. So if our expression is so hardwired to our heart and our emotion.
Can I add what you're saying?
Yeah.
And then people say, well, I don't have a choice. I'm tired. I don't have a choice.
Oh, okay.
We've always got a choice.
Yes.
What was the Battle of 1859 in the Harper's Ferry? What's his name did that? What was his name? The guy who started the revolution. Wanted to. Brown, was it? Anyway, after he was arrested and they found him for treason.
I know you mean. I can't think of it either.
Anyway, he was sitting on his own coffin, guarded by soldiers with sabers drawn and rifles nearby on the way to be hung. It was a November day, and he's looking around. He said, "Isn't this a beautiful day?" And the soldiers were perplexed that he could be upbeat while on the way to his execution. We always have choices.
Yeah.
The people we're talking about Israel these days, and Poland when they kicked everybody out, and there's 39 people took on the SS and held out in the ghetto for 39 days, and they only took them out. They made a choice. We always have choices.
Yes.
And so I'm coming home on a bad day. I have a choice to breathe deep, say something different, go sit in a corner for a while, but we don't have to behave badly. Nobody drives us to do that. It's the laziness, or we learned it early, or this is what men do or women do. This is how moms behave, dads behave. We need to get over that. We have a choice.
Well, and so when we model this early emotional behavior, it only sets up an additional stream, if you will, of further modeling in the behavior. Excuse me.
God bless you.
And so when we talk in terms of divorce and custody, parents who are going to counseling and modeling that behavior.
You're modeling some bad behavior right now, Jack. Bless you.
Excuse me. Talk more about that.
We lost you in your...
coughing, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. With the parents modeling, they can model good behavior, like going to counseling when they need it in therapy. And if a child needs it, certainly following suit, but also bad behavior. When parents are committing bad behavior, and I say committing.
Come on, nobody's called out for bad behavior. It's my truth. I get to do whatever I want. Get over yourself.
Oh, man, it's the
Isn't that where
biggest...
we live?
It's the biggest frustration to me. So, for instance, I'm the guardian ad litem. I did tons of guardian ad litem work for years, and I would be in this case where, the mother is bringing home multiple partners every night, different partners, different people, and and I would, in a custody battle, you're picking sides. That's my job, and we're at court now, and we're trying to figure out how to work this out. And the first thing I always used to get was like, Mr. Cardani, you shouldn't bring up that morality. It doesn't matter. I'm like, but it does matter. You're modeling relationships to this kid. You're modeling sexual behavior with this kid. All these things are being modeled, and I was like, I just get this deaf ear every time to it, to the point where I'd be like, I'd leave sometimes so frustrated, going like, these things matter.
That everything we buy If you buy a battery, I think there's an instruction manual how to use it. You follow me?
Yeah.
There's everything except the human being. We live in a world where there's no instruction manual. Well, there is. Call it the Bible, St. Thomas's Summa, Aristotle. There is truths been learned through thousands of years of history across cultures, universally agreed. Humans behave, do well doing X, Y, and Z. Except the world we live in today where all bets are off. There is no...
No absolute truth.
There is no truth at all, so that you do whatever you want, there's no impact. Those things have evolved through time because there is an impact. It is known. You may not see it today, but you keep doing this, that'll happen.
Yeah, and I see it all the time.
And it's written in books and it's known.
We see it all the time, like criminal behavior. I hear judges all the time say, well, this behavior, your high conflict divorce is going to cause your child to have criminal problems or other problems, drug problems. They'll say that. But it's interesting to me when we dive into this area of more personal choices like sexual behavior or drug use, casual, alcohol use or whatever, and we go, well, that isn't the same thing, and that has a different, and I'm like, no, it's the same. For me, it's the same because, like I said, we want our kids to have healthy relationships when they want to grow up. We don't want our kids awakened to sexual behavior and feelings because, again, seeing that sexual behavior can, like he said, seeing it can awaken emotion that a 4-year-old has no idea what to do with that emotion, no processor for it.
A butterfly lives in not a cocoon, what's another word for cocoon? A butterfly is in a...
Oh, you had to bring up that word.
It's, okay, when the butterfly comes out of it, chrysalis.
Yeah, chrysalis, yeah.
Chrysalis. When the chrysalis is broken and the butterfly begins to emerge, there's no putting it back in. You can't reseal it. And when it's premature, right? This is exactly what we're talking about. When you prematurely open that, the world is not the same.
Lots and lots of data about kids being exposed to sexual, either the viewing it or seeing it or it happening to them at younger ages, how they're really kind of stamped with that. It's hard to get past it the rest of their lives.
Well, and sometimes we see it. So I want to back up.
Yeah, please.
Scott, you said the modeling, and you linked it to the high conflict families especially in juvenile court, because we hear it from our juvenile judges all the time. The more often the parents are in court, the more likely the juvenile is going to be a delinquent. That's just hard and fast. I had a judge say it again the other day, Judge Davis. She was substituting in Dinwiddie. She said, hello, by the way. But every single juvenile court judge I've been in front of has said those exact same things. But if that behavior, this high conflict behavior that's being modeled for the children is impacting them, certainly we can draw a connection to the other behaviors that the parents are engaging in that is modeling for the children and what that line. So I think hopefully we can cross this bridge a little easier by drawing that connection. If they already see it in the conflict, certainly they can start seeing it in other behaviors as well. But the next place I was headed was we see families who the children, sometimes very young, are on the same iCloud as their parents. And the parent or the step-parent has uploaded or downloaded or done something they didn't want the family iCloud to have access to, but here we are, they do. And so here at their own hand, they've exposed their child. And is that something that, I mean, if it happens once, it's accidental, but how do we address that? It's still a modeling behavior, right? They've still impacted this child for a long time. How do we address that? How do we help these families move through and acknowledge that their behavior matters?
To do the unthinkable and to say there is truth. To say there's right and wrong. To say there's a way to live your life. You can't just live it any way you want. That isn't said. Apparently judges don't like to say that. You do some sexual behavior, do some things, you're not doing to your kids, but your kids are witnessing it. That has no impact. Of course it has impact. And for someone to be confronted over that, and maybe some consequences even over that, not to have to be permanent, until people wake up. You can't just do anything without consequences.
So if you want your kids to have a good life, model a good life.
And before that, maybe even once in a while think about what is a good life. Read a book, check it out, do something beyond yourself.
Yeah. I think so often what we've been trained in especially in America, I think more than any other culture, is the short-term microwave generation. So we never think long-term how our behavior could affect our child. For instance, like you said, here's in the Christmas story, here's dad cursing all the time, mom oblivious to that. And then when
Ralphie
says it, it's like a crisis, and we're like, holy, what's going on? And
then Schwartz gets beat up.
and then poor Schwartz.
Well, and when if you go to some of these like old cathedrals or the Biltmore and all those places, and you look at the thought that went in, and they planted the trees to replace the board in 100 years. They did all these things. Their thought process was so far down the road. I never forget how blown away I was. I was at a cathedral, and there was this beautiful forest, all lined perfectly. All the trees were, lined up. And I was thinking to myself, oh, that's so really cool how they did that. And then the guy said, this is here because they thought enough in 200 years this building is going to need repaired. So they planted the exact same seeds and trees so they could use the exact same wood to fix what needed to be done so this building could maintain its beauty.
You're making a point that plays out a different way. The average retirement for somebody in their 60s, what is it, 30? It's a very small number. I forget, 38 or 45,000, maybe less than $100,000 in retirement for the average person, because you want the iPhone, you want the newer car, you don't want to keep your car, make it last 10 years, you want to get a new one, because you want to go out to dinner. There's no thought. What are you doing? Well, that's the metaphor of what are you doing with your kids and your family and your own lineage.
Yes.
A guy called Erik Erikson has 8 stages of emotional development, and the 8th one is integration or despair. Old age, basically. When you look at your life, are you pleased generally with what you've done? We've all made mistakes. We screwed up. We would go back and redo all kinds of stuff. But is it good enough? And an awful lot of people begin waking up after they've messed it up when they're in 20s and 30s. Oh my God, look what I've got. My kids won't talk to me. I don't see anybody. You follow me? And these good modeling results in good things later. You follow me? You planted trees and it shows up. Okay, it's 50 years later, not 200, but you're building your own future. Nobody thinks that way.
I remember an example, and I'm going to probably turn some people off, but I think it's poignant, and had a guy who was struggling with porn, addiction to porn. Of course, everybody says today that's not a big deal. I hear people all the time in courts and everybody, that their addiction doesn't matter. So he's scrolling one day, and guess what he comes upon? His daughter in the very video that he's watching.
Oh my God.
And it so impacted him and changed his life that he became this big advocate against porn and changed his whole life in his stripes, because he realized my behavior, and we all know, regardless of what you believe, people in porn aren't usually there because they like it.
That's right.
It's one of the highest, broken people.
Yes.
Things like that. People always say, well, I chose to be, okay, whatever. I can go through all that and modeling and how you got there. But my point is, it impacts. And I always think of that guy, man. I tell you, I learned that at a very young age, and it kept me straight at times. Some of the things I want to do, I thought, could you imagine? Could you really imagine being in that situation? I think of that guy all the time, and I don't even know him. But it was just a story I was told by a really good friend of mine, and one of the guys who was trying to help me model good behavior as I was going through college. And it just amazes me, man. That little simple thing, I couldn't imagine getting there and actually seeing the product of your decisions right there unfolding in your daughter in a crazily unhealthy lifestyle and reduced to an image on a screen, and her whole personhood has to be so rocked and all those kind of things, because you can't live off that, regardless of what people say. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these things matter to that extent in custody conflicts and things like that. These things matter. Of course, everybody's, like you would say, everybody has some bad behavior they're modeling. Nobody's perfect. I'm not looking. We're not mediators of perfection or trying to get there, but these certain things matter more than others, correct?
Nobody's perfect, but I still think we have to, there is objective reality. objective reality. Things are right and things are wrong. And they're not called wrong because some church declared it because they're all uptight. The church is declaring it because that's a history of wisdom.
Yeah.
Sure.
These things are real. They're not imaginary. Somebody's not just being a fuddy-duddy, These things matter. And those rules that used to be followed are all up for grabs. When I was a kid, we lived in Cincinnati before moving to Florida. And the priest, the Catholic Church was one end of the street and the movie theater was on the other. And on Saturday, he would park his car in the front of the movie theater, and if he thought the movie was not well rated, he would tell his parishioners, and most everybody in the whole area was his parishioner, you can't go in there. Now, some people still did. You can't. But he would say, park his car literally, and have roll the windows down from here to 10 feet away to the where you buy your ticket. What are you doing? And after a while, the movie theater only showed really nice movies.
Oh.
That's fine.
But, there was a standard. Maybe he wasn't a fascist, but he was trying to enforce some things are good and some things not.
Yeah.
There's wisdom about that. It's real. We can study it. It's not all up for grabs. It's not all whatever you feel is true.
Well, and the last thing I want to say, folks, is these phones that we give these kids, and they're modeling behavior for your children. They're teaching your children, whether you like it or not, the videos they watch, the programs they see.
Pinterest,
the games,
TikTok.
Yeah, all of it. There is a modeling going on that you're probably very unaware of, because we don't pick up our kids' phones and watch everything they watch. I have parents all the time say, I know everything my kid does. I'm like, okay. I'm a realist. I know my kids are smarter than I am with a phone. They can get away with stuff. But the point is, just be aware that our behaviors and those things matter, and what they're watching on TV matters. And there is modeling, and our kids learn from, as Bill said, I think the primal example of that is when you're a kid and you're learning language. You don't learn language just by listening it. You learn it by everything. See what you see, what you hear, and how it all puts together.
Inflection,
all those things.
What shows up on the parent's face?
Yes.
What they're doing when they say it. What's the context? Yes.
All that stuff matters. And so for me, this was, a very important subject. And a lot of people don't want to hear it. And a lot of people will be like, well, you're trying to add your morals. But as Bill said, there is objective truth. These things do matter. They do play out in our kids' lives. And they do have consequences. I want my kids, all 8 of them, to have healthy relationships. I want all my kids to be productive citizens, and I want all my kids to model good behavior. Those are all important things to me. I want them to be healthy, wealthy, and wise, so to speak, the old adage.
Well, the thought is put the forethought into your behavior as it is an example for those that are watching you, whether it's as a business owner or as a parent or a grandparent. People are watching you, and you are, whether you like it or not, you are leading other people, perhaps the next generation or the generation after that.
Can I add an example that applied to me? When I was doing training, the university had a video room in the Department of Psychiatry, that whole floor, and after 5 it was available. Very, very expensive tapes. And I began doing marriage counseling in that room, taped, so I can show a supervisor. And the first thing I noticed and was bothered by, I didn't see anything about them, all my weird gestures, all the weird things I was saying and doing. Oh God, and it was begin to see what I was doing was quite informative. You follow me? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
But, to pretend as if we're always, somebody's looking at us, as you just said. And what do people see, rather than everything is hidden.
Yes.
And this attitude that it doesn't matter, you can live your life that it doesn't matter. And we don't want to live our lives controlled by others and what you think about everything I do. That's true, but you want to think about what you're doing and what you're projecting and how you want to be perceived as. At least you should. I mean, I think that's important, but,
Well, importantly about your children, right? This is where we started, is how to give your kids a good life. And really, it's about modeling what it is you want for them, not telling them what you want for them, but modeling for them the example. If you want them to have a savings account, teach them how to save. If you want them to be, honest, tell the truth. You want them to make their bed every day, make your bed every day. It's modeling that behavior. And if we can make that connection for families and for our judicial system that impacts families so heavily, hopefully we can start leaning towards seeing that there are other behaviors that are being modeled that should be impacting custody determinations that sometimes are not.
Yeah, I think that's it. Well, again, thank you for being here. Please like and subscribe. That helps us know that the content we're putting out is being used or appreciated. We're trying to help you all out. So please do that.
Questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. info@cclawva.com.
All right, have a good day.
Ian.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of What to Do When. For more episodes, be sure to subscribe to our podcast, and we encourage you to check our archives to listen to previous topics. Tune in next week for a new episode and some fresh perspective from Critzer Cardani.